Hachioji City, Tokyo. A Sunday night in late July 1995. The summer is at its worst. Hot, humid, the kind of evening where you want the day to be over. Inside a suburban supermarket called Nampei Owada, 3 women are working the closing shift. 2 of them are high school students earning pocket money on the side. The third, a 47-year-old woman named Noriko Inagaki, has been the night manager for exactly 1 month. By 9:15 in the evening, all 3 of them are dead, bound with tape, shot once in the head, left on the floor of the second-floor office. And here is the part that nobody in Japan has been able to move past in 30 years. There has been no arrest. The perpetrator has never been identified. The case is still open today, with a 6 million yen reward sitting unclaimed. This is the Hachioji Supermarket Murders. It was July 30th, 1995, a Sunday. The Nampei Owada store sat in the Owada district of Hachioji, a city on the western fringe of Tokyo, a busy, ordinary suburb, commuter trains, convenience stores, the kind of neighborhood that never expects anything to happen. The supermarket's layout matters to understanding what happened that night. The main floor was your standard grocery level, but above it, accessible only through an outdoor staircase around the back of the building, was a second-floor manager's office. That staircase wasn't the kind of thing a random customer would stumble across. You had to know it was there. That evening, Noriko Inagaki and 17-year-old Megumi Yabuki arrived at the store around 5 in the afternoon to begin their 4-hour closing shifts. By 6:30, all the other employees had finished their work and left. That left just Inagaki and Yabuki, one experienced woman in her first month as night manager and a teenager, to run the rest of the evening alone. Around 7 o'clock, a third young woman stopped by. Hiromi Maeda, 16 years old, had come to the store that evening not as a scheduled worker, but simply to visit. It said she decided to stay on and help out when she saw there were only 2 of them. She stayed. The store closed. Sometime after 9, the 3 women were in the second-floor office, the only place in the building where cash was held. A safe sat in that room containing approximately 4 million yen. When police responded at around 9:15 that evening, they found Noriko Inagaki, Megumi Yabuki, and Hiromi Maeda on the office floor. All 3 had been bound with adhesive tape. Each had been shot once in the head. None of them had survived. The safe had not been opened, but there were visible signs on the door that someone had tried to pry it. The perpetrator, or perpetrators, had vanished. What struck investigators from the very beginning was the methodical nature of it. Whoever entered that office had come prepared. They had brought tape to bind the victims. They had brought a firearm, and they had used both, in a way that suggested not panic or rage, but deliberate, planned execution. 3 people, bound, shot once each. The whole thing was controlled, efficient, purposeful. The location of that outdoor staircase matters here. To reach the second-floor office, you would have to already know it existed. It wasn't something a shopper wandering the floor below would find by accident. Someone had either been to this store before or had done their reconnaissance. Over the course of the investigation, police built up a picture of the physical evidence left behind. On the floor near the store's entrance path, in the parking lot area, police found cigarette butts. This would eventually become one of the most painstaking aspects of the investigation. Over the following years and decades, using advances in DNA technology, investigators managed to identify the smokers of nearly every one of those cigarettes. All of them, people unconnected to the case. All but 2. 2 cigarette butts found near the path from the parking lot to the entrance have yielded DNA that has never been matched to any identified person. They remain part of the open file. The binding tape produced the most significant forensic lead. Decades after the crime, investigators used a specialized gas technique to separate the adhesive layer of the tape and recover latent fingerprints. In February 2015, police announced that prints recovered from the tape bore a resemblance, 8 matching points, to those of a Japanese man who had been in his 40s at the time of the crime and who had died in 2005. 8 points of similarity is not, by Japanese forensic standards, sufficient to establish identity with certainty. Police themselves acknowledged it would not be usable as courtroom evidence. A promising lead that hit a wall, the one man who might have been identified was already dead. and the match wasn't definitive enough to close the case. The weapon left the most striking forensic thread of all. Ballistic examination of the bullets and shell casings recovered from the scene identified the firearm as a Squires Bingham pistol, a handgun manufactured in the Philippines. From the outside, these pistols are designed to closely resemble a Colt. They were sometimes used by criminals in Japan precisely because they could be mistaken for something else. The Squires Bingham is not a weapon a civilian would casually acquire in Japan, where gun laws are among the strictest in the world. Whoever carried it into that office had access to channels outside the law. In 2009, 14 years after the murders, a Squires Bingham pistol was seized by police from a gangster arrested on a separate matter. Forensic testing at the Metropolitan Police Department's laboratory showed that the ballistic striations, the microscopic line marks impressed on a bullet as it passes through the barrel, were strikingly similar to those on the bullets recovered from the Hachioji scene. Police investigated this weapon as a strong possible match. Despite the lead, no prosecution followed. The official theory has always been that this was a robbery, a failed one, given that the safe was never opened. The store held 4 million yen in that office, and there are signs the perpetrator tried to get to it. Since none of the three women knew the combination, the money stayed locked away. Under this reading, the murders were committed either to silence witnesses or because violence was always part of the plan. But the robbery theory has always carried a weight of doubt. If eliminating witnesses was the goal, why would a professional criminal choose a target where 3 people happened to be present, when the intention was apparently to crack a safe? And if the women didn't know the combination, how did the perpetrator know the money was even there? The specificity of the target, a second-floor office, accessed via a concealed staircase on a night when only 3 inexperienced employees were present, suggests prior knowledge of the store's routines and layout. Investigators also pursued a completely different line, a Chinese organized crime connection. In 2009, a Japanese man imprisoned in Dalian, China, on death row for methamphetamine trafficking, made a statement that a Chinese national living in Canada had committed the Hachioji murders as part of a gang, a mixed group of Chinese and Japanese criminals who carried out a string of robberies across Japan in the 1990s. The man named was Liang He. Liang He was not unknown to Japanese authorities. He had been sought in Japan since 2002 when he left the country using a forged passport. By the time the lead emerged, he had obtained Canadian citizenship and was living in Canada. Japan's National Police Agency filed a formal extradition request with the Canadian government in 2010. Liang He fought it. His appeals were ultimately unsuccessful. He was extradited to Japan in 2013. In Japan, he was convicted and jailed for the passport fraud. On the matter of the Hachioji murders, he has said nothing. Whether out of genuine ignorance, legal caution, or deliberate silence, he has never confirmed or denied any involvement. That Chapter 2 has produced no resolution. Meanwhile, a faction of a criminal syndicate was also questioned about the case at some point. The group publicly denied any involvement. What to make of that denial, and how much credence investigators placed in it, has never been made fully public. The motive, in other words, remains unestablished. A botched robbery, an organized crime operation, a targeted act disguised as robbery. 3 women who were in the wrong place on the wrong night, or 3 women who were specifically chosen. 30 years of investigation has not closed the gap between those possibilities. What does the evidence tell us about the person, or people, who walked up that outdoor staircase on the night of July 30th, 1995? This is interpretive territory, and I want to be careful about it. There is no confession, no courtroom profile, no convicted defendant whose psychology has been formally examined. What we can do is read the evidence. The first thing the evidence says is, this was not impulsive. Tape was brought to the scene. A firearm was brought to the scene. A Philippines-manufactured pistol, the kind that doesn't turn up in casual circumstances, suggests access to underworld supply chains. The decision to enter that specific office, via that specific staircase, suggests prior familiarity with the target. Planning happened before July 30th. The second thing the evidence says is, whoever did this was capable of extreme, controlled violence. 3 people, 1 shot each, no excessive force, no chaotic struggle, or at least no evidence of one. This is not the crime scene of someone acting in a rage spiral. It has the structure of someone who made peace with the idea of killing before they arrived. The third thing, and this is where the case becomes genuinely disturbing to sit with, is what didn't happen. The money stayed locked in the safe. The perpetrator tried the door and failed, and then apparently left. Left behind 3 dead women, 2 unidentified cigarette butts, a partial fingerprint on tape, and 30 years of questions, and walked back down that outdoor staircase into the summer night. Whatever was driving this person, greed, desperation, a job contracted by someone else, something more personal and harder to name, they have lived with it ever since. They have not spoken. No deathbed confession has surfaced. No one, in 30 years, has come forward with the name. 30 years is a long time to wait for an answer that hasn't come. Megumi Yabuki was 17 years old. She was working a part-time shift at a suburban supermarket, the kind of job thousands of teenagers across Japan hold every weekend. Hiromi Maeda was 16. She hadn't even been scheduled that evening, and by all accounts, she just stayed to help out. Noriko Inagaki was 47 and had been the night manager for exactly 1 month when she died. 1 month, she had just started. Their families have waited through 3 decades of news cycles, forensic developments, international extradition proceedings, DNA advances, and annual press conferences in which police remind the public that the case is still open. As of 2025, the Special Investigation Headquarters of the Metropolitan Police had received 1,678 tips over the life of the case, 32 of them in just the past year. The National Police Agency's reward for information leading to an arrest stands at 6 million yen, 2 cigarette butts, a partial fingerprint from a dead man, a Philippine pistol seized from a gangster, a Chinese man extradited from Canada who won't speak, a safe that was never opened. None of it has been enough. Not yet. Japan has changed enormously since 1995. Forensic technology has improved. DNA databases have expanded. International cooperation between law enforcement agencies has deepened. And still, the person who walked up a back staircase in Hachioji on a July Sunday night has not been found. If you know something, anything, the Metropolitan Police Department is still listening. The reward is still there. And 3 families are still waiting for the morning when this case stops being a cold file and becomes a name. If you want to follow more stories like this one, crimes from Japan's modern history that most people outside the country have never heard of, the link is below. And if this kind of deep dive into real cases is what you're here for, we'd be grateful if you'd subscribe. These stories don't get old.